What if I told you that everything you've been taught about mental strength is wrong? That the advice to just think positive or push through the pain is not only useless, but actually makes you weaker? Right now, millions of people are struggling with stress, anxiety, and overwhelming challenges, believing that mental toughness is something you're either born with or you're not. But the truth is far more powerful and far more actionable than that. Mental strength isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. It's not about grinding through every obstacle with brute force willpower. Real mental strength is a trainable skill, backed by neuroscience, that allows you to rewire your brain's response to stress, uncertainty, and adversity. The people who seem unbreakable, who thrive under pressure, and bounce back from setbacks faster than others, they're not superhuman. They've simply learned to train their minds the same way athletes train their bodies. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete system for building unshakable mental resilience. You'll understand the science behind why your brain reacts the way it does to stress. And, more importantly, you'll have the exact techniques used by Navy SEALs, elite athletes, and top performers to reprogram their minds for strength. This isn't theory. This is a practical blueprint that you can start using today to transform how your mind handles any challenge life throws at you. Chapter 1. Why traditional mental health advice fails you. Most people approach mental strength completely backwards. They wait until they're already overwhelmed, stressed, or broken down. Then they try to fix themselves with positive thinking, meditation apps, or motivational videos. But here's the brutal truth. Trying to build mental strength when you're already in crisis is like trying to build muscle during a heart attack. It's too late, and you're using the wrong approach entirely. The reason traditional advice fails is because it treats symptoms instead of addressing the root cause. Your brain is designed to protect you from threats, and in our modern world, it's constantly misfiring, treating every email, deadline, or uncomfortable conversation as a life or death situation. When you tell someone who's having a panic attack to just breathe deeply, you're asking them to override millions of years of evolutionary programming with a technique they've never properly trained. Think about this. If you wanted to run a marathon, would you just show up on race day and hope positive thinking gets you through 26 miles? Of course not. You'd train systematically, gradually building your endurance, strengthening your cardiovascular system, and conditioning your body to handle the stress of long-distance running. Yet when it comes to mental strength, people expect to handle life's marathons with zero training. The most dangerous myth is that mental strength means being emotionally numb or never feeling stressed. This creates a toxic cycle where people judge themselves for having normal human reactions, which actually weakens their mental resilience. Real mental strength isn't about not feeling emotions. It's about developing the capacity to feel them fully while still maintaining clear thinking and effective action. Another critical failure in traditional approaches is the focus on individual techniques rather than integrated systems. Someone might learn breathing exercises, but never practice them until they're already panicking. They might understand cognitive reframing, but only try to use it when their thoughts are already spiraling. This piecemeal approach is like learning individual piano keys but never practicing songs. You need a comprehensive training system that builds multiple capacities simultaneously and integrates them into your daily life before you need them. The neuroscience is clear. Your brain changes based on what you repeatedly practice. If you repeatedly practice reacting to stress with panic, overwhelm, or avoidance, you're literally strengthening those neural pathways. Every time you let anxiety control your decisions, every time you avoid discomfort, every time you catastrophize about future problems, you're training your brain to be mentally weak. But the opposite is also true. When you systematically practice responding to challenges with calm focus, emotional regulation, and strategic thinking, you rewire your brain for resilience. Most people also make the mistake of believing that mental strength is about individual willpower. They think it's about being tough enough to handle everything alone. But research from Stanford and Harvard shows that the strongest people aren't those who rely on willpower. They're those who build systems, environments, and habits that support their mental resilience without requiring constant, conscious effort. The final reason traditional advice fails is that it assumes all stress is bad and should be eliminated. This is completely backwards. Stress is the stimulus that builds mental strength, just like resistance builds muscle. The goal isn't to avoid all stress. It's to learn how to engage with appropriate levels of stress in a controlled way that builds your capacity over time. When you understand this fundamental principle, everything changes. You stop seeing challenges as things to survive and start seeing them as opportunities to grow stronger. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Mental Resilience and How Your Brain Actually Works. Your brain is not designed for the modern world. Understanding this simple fact is the foundation of building real mental strength. For millions of years, human brains evolved to handle immediate, physical threats that required quick fight-or-flight responses. See a predator, run or fight, then return to baseline once the threat passed. But in today's world, your brain treats everything from work deadlines to social media notifications as potential threats, keeping you in a constant state of low-level stress that erodes your mental resilience over time. The key to mental strength lies in understanding three critical brain systems: the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the anterior cingulate cortex. Your amygdala is your brain's alarm system, constantly scanning for threats and triggering stress responses. It's lightning fast but not very smart, which is why you can feel anxious about things that logically make no sense. Your prefrontal cortex is your brain's CEO, responsible for rational thinking, planning, and emotional regulation. The anterior cingulate cortex acts like a bridge, helping coordinate between emotional and rational responses. Here's where it gets interesting. These brain regions are in constant competition for control. When your amygdala detects a threat, it floods your system with stress hormones that actually impair your prefrontal cortex's ability to function. This is why you can't think clearly. When you're highly stressed or emotional, your rational brain literally goes offline, leaving you at the mercy of primitive fight-or-flight responses that made sense 50,000 years ago but are completely inappropriate for modern challenges. But here's the game-changing insight. You can train these brain systems just like you train muscles. Through specific practices, you can strengthen your prefrontal cortex's ability to stay online during stress, improve your amygdala's threat detection accuracy, and enhance the communication between them. This isn't wishful thinking. It's measurable neuroplasticity, backed by thousands of studies. The process works through something called stress inoculation. When you expose yourself to controlled, manageable stress while maintaining calm focus, You literally rewire your brain's stress response system. Navy SEALs use this principle in their training, gradually exposing recruits to increasingly intense situations while teaching them to maintain operational effectiveness. Each time they successfully navigate stress while staying mentally clear, they strengthen the neural pathways that support resilience. One of the most powerful discoveries in neuroscience is that your brain can't tell the difference between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. This is why mental rehearsal is so effective. When elite athletes visualize perfect performance, their brains fire the same neural patterns as if they were actually performing. You can use this same principle to train mental strength by mentally rehearsing calm, effective responses to stressful situations. Your brain also has what scientists call a negativity bias, meaning it pays more attention to potential threats than opportunities. This kept our ancestors alive. But in the modern world, it makes you focus on everything that could go wrong rather than everything that could go right. Understanding this bias allows you to consciously redirect your attention towards solutions and possibilities rather than getting stuck in worry loops. Another crucial insight is that your brain is constantly predicting the future based on past experiences. If you've repeatedly experienced stress as overwhelming and uncontrollable, your brain will predict that future stress will be the same way, triggering anticipatory anxiety even before anything stressful happens. But when you systematically build positive experiences of handling stress effectively, you reprogram these predictive patterns. The most exciting part is that neuroplasticity never stops. Your brain remains capable of forming new neural pathways throughout your entire life. This means that regardless of your past experiences with stress, anxiety, or trauma, you can literally rebuild your brain's response patterns. Research shows that people who practice mental strength training show measurable changes in brain structure within just 8 weeks. The key is understanding that mental strength training must be systematic and progressive. You can't just read about these concepts and expect change. You have to actively practice new response patterns under gradually increasing levels of stress. Every time you choose a resilient response over a reactive one, you're literally carving new neural grooves that make that response more automatic in the future. Chapter 3. The Foundation: Building Stress Immunity through Controlled Exposure. Most people approach stress completely backwards. They either try to avoid it entirely, which leaves them weak and unprepared, or they let themselves get overwhelmed by it, which damages their resilience over time. But elite performers understand a third option: stress inoculation. This is the systematic practice of exposing yourself to controlled amounts of stress while maintaining mental clarity and effective action. Think of stress immunity like physical immunity. When you get a vaccine, doctors inject you with a small, controlled amount of a virus, so your immune system can learn to fight it without getting sick. Stress inoculation works the same way, by deliberately exposing yourself to manageable challenges while practicing resilient responses. You train your nervous system to handle increasingly difficult situations without breaking down. The key word here is controlled. This isn't about throwing yourself into overwhelming situations and hoping for the best. It's about carefully calibrating the level of stress so that it's challenging enough to trigger adaptation, but not so intense that it overwhelms your capacity to respond effectively. This requires understanding your current stress tolerance and gradually expanding it over time. Start by identifying your stress triggers. Most people react automatically to stress without ever analyzing what specifically triggers their responses. Is it time pressure, uncertainty, social judgment, conflict, financial pressure? Once you know your specific triggers, you can design controlled exposures that gradually build your tolerance to each one. For time pressure, you might start by setting artificially tight deadlines for low-stakes tasks. Give yourself 10 minutes to clean a room that usually takes 15. Or challenge yourself to write an email in 5 minutes, instead of your usual 15. The goal isn't to rush through everything in life. It's to practice maintaining focus and decision-making speed under time constraints. For uncertainty, practice deliberately putting yourself in situations where you don't know the outcome. This might mean taking a different route to work, trying a new restaurant without reading reviews first, or starting a project before you have all the information. Each time you navigate uncertainty while staying calm and resourceful, you strengthen your tolerance for ambiguity. For social stress, gradually increase your exposure to social situations that feel slightly uncomfortable. This might mean speaking up in meetings, asking questions in public settings, or initiating conversations with strangers. The key is to start small and build up systematically rather than jumping into your biggest fears. Here's where most people go wrong. They practice stress inoculation sporadically and inconsistently. But building stress immunity requires the same systematic approach as building physical fitness. You need regular, progressive training sessions that gradually increase in intensity over time. This means scheduling specific times for stress training rather than waiting for stressful situations to happen randomly. One of the most effective protocols is the graduated exposure system. Start with situations that create about a 3 out of 10 stress level. Practice your stress management techniques in these situations until you can maintain complete mental clarity and effective action. Only then do you progress to 4 out of 10 stress levels, then 5, and so on. This gradual progression allows your nervous system to adapt without getting overwhelmed. Another critical component is recovery protocols. Just like you need rest between workout sessions to allow muscle adaptation, you need recovery time between stress training sessions to allow nervous system adaptation. This might involve specific relaxation techniques, quality sleep, or engaging in activities that restore your mental energy. The most powerful aspect of stress inoculation is that it changes your relationship with stress itself. Instead of viewing stress as something that happens to you, you start seeing it as information and opportunity. You develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes your way, because you've systematically proven to yourself that you can remain effective under pressure. Advanced practitioners take this even further by deliberately seeking out stressful situations as training opportunities. They volunteer for challenging projects, put themselves in competitive situations, or take on leadership roles that stretch their capabilities. This isn't masochism, it's strategic conditioning. They understand that the only way to build extraordinary resilience is through extraordinary preparation. Chapter 4. Emotional Regulation Mastery. The skill that separates the strong from the weak. The difference between mentally strong people and everyone else isn't that strong people don't feel negative emotions. It's that they've mastered the skill of emotional regulation. The ability to feel emotions fully without being controlled by them. This is the most misunderstood aspect of mental strength. And it's the reason why so many people fail to develop real resilience. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. When they feel angry, they act angry. When they feel anxious, they avoid or procrastinate. When they feel sad, they withdraw and ruminate. They mistake feeling emotions for being controlled by emotions, which creates a cycle where their emotional state dictates their actions, which creates more negative emotions, which leads to more ineffective actions. Emotional regulation is not about suppressing feelings or pretending to be happy when you're not. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that emotional suppression actually weakens mental health and increases stress over time. Instead, emotional regulation is about creating space between feeling an emotion and reacting to it. It's about maintaining your ability to think clearly and act effectively even when you're experiencing intense feelings. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. When you experience a strong emotion, your amygdala floods your system with neurochemicals that can hijack your rational thinking for up to 20 minutes. During this time, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for good decision-making, is literally impaired. This is why you say things you regret when you're angry or make terrible decisions when you're anxious. But here's what changes everything. You can train your prefrontal cortex to stay online even during emotional storms. This happens through a process called cognitive reappraisal, where you consciously reframe your interpretation of emotional triggers. Instead of seeing anger as something that controls you, you start seeing it as information about your values. Instead of seeing anxiety as a sign of weakness, you recognize it as your brain trying to prepare you for challenges. The first step in emotional regulation mastery is developing emotional awareness. Most people are emotionally illiterate. They know they feel bad or stressed, but can't identify the specific emotions they're experiencing. Research shows that people who can accurately identify and name their emotions have significantly better emotional regulation than those who can't. Start practicing emotional granularity by expanding your emotional vocabulary beyond basic categories like happy, sad, angry, or afraid. Learn to distinguish between frustration and disappointment, between anxiety and excitement, between sadness and grief. The more precisely you can identify what you're feeling, the more effectively you can regulate it. The next level is understanding the difference between primary and secondary emotions. A primary emotion is your immediate, automatic response to a situation. A secondary emotion is your reaction to your primary emotion. For example, you might feel embarrassed about making a mistake, primary, then feel angry at yourself for feeling embarrassed, secondary. Most emotional suffering comes from secondary emotions, the way you judge and resist your natural feelings. One of the most powerful emotional regulation techniques is called emotional surfing. Instead of fighting against difficult emotions or trying to make them go away immediately, you learn to ride them out like waves. You notice the physical sensations of the emotion in your body. Observe how it builds, peaks, and naturally subsides without trying to change it. This teaches your nervous system that emotions are temporary experiences rather than permanent states. Advanced emotional regulation involves learning to use emotions as information and energy rather than obstacles. Anger, properly channeled, can fuel determination and boundary setting. Anxiety, properly understood, can enhance focus and preparation. Even sadness can deepen empathy and motivation for change. The goal isn't to eliminate negative emotions, but to transform them into allies. Another critical skill is emotional flexibility, the ability to experience different emotions in response to the same situation depending on what's most useful. If you're facing a deadline, you might choose to feel energized rather than stressed. If someone criticizes you, you might choose curiosity about their perspective rather than defensiveness. This isn't about being fake. It's about recognizing that you have more choice in your emotional responses than most people realize. The most advanced practitioners develop what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to make fine distinctions between similar emotional states and choose the most appropriate response for each situation. They might recognize the difference between productive concern and unproductive worry, between healthy guilt that motivates change and toxic shame that creates paralysis. Building emotional regulation mastery requires daily practice with progressively more challenging situations. Start by practicing with low-intensity emotions during calm moments. Then, gradually work up to maintaining regulation during more intense emotional states. This systematic approach ensures that you have these skills available when you need them most. Chapter 5. The Elite Mindset. How to think like someone who never breaks. The most mentally strong people in the world don't just have better emotional regulation or stress tolerance. They have a completely different way of interpreting reality itself. They've developed what psychologists call an elite mindset, a set of beliefs and thinking patterns that make them virtually unbreakable in the face of adversity. The foundation of the elite mindset is anti-fragility, a concept that goes beyond resilience. Resilient people bounce back from setbacks. Anti-fragile people actually become stronger because of setbacks. They don't just survive challenges, they use challenges as fuel for growth. This isn't positive thinking or motivational nonsense. It's a systematic way of reframing every difficulty as an opportunity to build capacity. Elite performers understand that obstacles aren't interruptions to their path. Obstacles are the path. When most people encounter setbacks, they see them as evidence that something is going wrong. When elite performers encounter setbacks, they see them as proof that they're pushing their limits and growing stronger. This fundamental shift in perspective changes everything about how you respond to difficulty. The first element of elite thinking is extreme ownership. This concept, developed by Navy SEAL commanders, means taking complete responsibility for everything that happens in your sphere of influence, regardless of whether it's technically your fault. This isn't about self-blame or guilt. It's about power. When you take ownership of a situation, you immediately gain the power to change it. When you blame external factors, you make yourself a victim with no control. Most people resist extreme ownership because they think it means accepting blame for things that aren't their fault. But elite performers understand that blame and responsibility are different things. You might not be responsible for what happens to you, but you're always responsible for how you respond to what happens to you. This distinction is the difference between feeling powerless and feeling empowered. The second element is what's called the growth mindset, but taken to an extreme level. Most people understand growth mindset as believing you can improve through effort. Elite performers take this further. They believe that every failure contains the seeds of future success, that every weakness points toward a strength they haven't developed yet, and that every limitation is just their current edge, not their permanent boundary. This creates what researchers call a challenge orientation rather than a threat orientation. When most people face difficulties, their brains automatically categorize them as threats to be avoided or survived. Elite performers train themselves to automatically categorize challenges as opportunities to test and expand their capabilities. This isn't just optimistic thinking, it's a complete rewiring of how their nervous system responds to uncertainty. Another crucial element is long-term thinking. Most people operate from day to day or week to week, making decisions based on immediate comfort or short-term gains. Elite performers think in decades. They make decisions based on who they want to become and what they want to build over the long term, not on how they feel in the moment. This long-term perspective makes them incredibly resilient to short-term setbacks because they understand that temporary failures are just data points in a much larger trajectory. Elite performers also develop what's called strategic patience. They understand that real strength is built slowly and methodically over time, not through dramatic gestures or intense bursts of effort. They're willing to invest months or years in building capabilities that others aren't willing to develop because they understand that sustainable excellence requires sustainable practices. One of the most powerful aspects of elite thinking is the ability to find meaning in suffering. This doesn't mean seeking out unnecessary pain, but it means being able to extract value and purpose from inevitable difficulties. Viktor Frankl discovered this principle in Nazi concentration camps, noting that people who could find meaning in their suffering were more likely to survive than those who couldn't. Elite performers practice what's called cognitive flexibility, the ability to see situations from multiple perspectives and choose the most empowering interpretation. If they get rejected for a job, they might see it as a sign that they need to develop new skills, or as protection from a role that wouldn't have been right for them, or as motivation to start their own business. They don't just accept the first interpretation their brain offers, they actively generate alternatives and choose the one that serves their growth. Another key element is what researchers call grit, but it's more sophisticated than just persistence. Elite performers develop the ability to maintain passion and perseverance toward long-term goals despite failures, adversity, and plateaus. They understand that progress isn't linear and that apparent setbacks are often part of a larger pattern of growth that only becomes visible over time. The most advanced element of elite thinking is what some call the observer mind. Elite performers develop the ability to step outside their immediate experience and observe their thoughts and emotions with detachment. This allows them to respond strategically rather than reactively, even in highly charged situations. They can literally watch themselves experiencing stress or anger without being controlled by these experiences. Chapter 6. The Daily Training Protocol. Building mental muscle through systematic practice. Most people wait until they're in crisis to try building mental strength, which is like waiting until you're drowning to learn how to swim. Real mental strength comes from daily training protocols that systematically build your psychological capacity before you need it. Just like physical fitness requires consistent workouts, mental fitness requires consistent mental workouts designed to strengthen specific psychological muscles. The foundation of mental training is understanding that your mind responds to progressive overload just like your body does. If you lift the same weight every day, your muscles stop growing. If you handle the same level of mental challenges every day, your resilience stops growing. You need to systematically increase the difficulty of your mental training to continue building capacity. The most effective mental training protocols target 4 core areas: attention control, emotional regulation, stress tolerance, and cognitive flexibility. Each of these represents a different type of mental muscle that needs specific exercises to develop. Most people randomly practice different techniques without understanding which mental muscles they're actually training, which leads to uneven development and gaps in their resilience. Attention control is your ability to direct and sustain focus despite distractions, both external and internal. In our hyper-connected world, this might be the most critical mental skill you can develop. Every time you check your phone instead of completing a task, every time you let your mind wander during an important conversation, every time you get lost in worry instead of focusing on solutions, you're training weak attention control. The attention training protocol starts with basic focused attention exercises. Set a timer for 5 minutes and focus completely on a single point of concentration. This might be your breath, a word, or even a visual object. When your mind wanders, gently return it to the focus point without judgment. This isn't meditation for relaxation, it's strength training for your attention. As you get stronger, increase the duration and add distractions to practice maintaining focus under increasingly difficult conditions. Advanced attention training involves divided attention exercises, where you practice maintaining awareness of multiple things simultaneously without losing focus on any of them. You might practice having a conversation while monitoring background sounds, or working on a task while staying aware of your emotional state. This builds the kind of situational awareness that allows elite performers to stay calm and effective even in chaotic environments. Emotional regulation training goes beyond just managing feelings in the moment. It involves systematically building your capacity to experience intense emotions without losing effectiveness. Start with emotional exposure exercises, where you deliberately trigger mild negative emotions in controlled settings. Then practice maintaining clear thinking and good decision-making while experiencing those emotions. One powerful protocol is the emotional challenge ladder. Create a list of situations that trigger specific emotions, ranked from mild to intense. Start with the mildest triggers and practice your regulation techniques until you can maintain complete emotional control. Only then, move to the next level. This might involve watching slightly frustrating videos and practicing staying calm, then gradually working up to handling more intense emotional provocations. Stress tolerance training involves deliberately creating manageable stress and practicing effective responses. This might include time pressure exercises where you complete tasks under artificially tight deadlines, uncertainty training where you make decisions with incomplete information, or social stress training, where you practice difficult conversations or public speaking. The key to stress training is maintaining what psychologists call eustress rather than distress. Eustress is positive stress that challenges you without overwhelming you. It's the sweet spot where you're pushed beyond your comfort zone but still feel capable of rising to the challenge. If your training creates anxiety, panic, or shut-down responses, you've gone too far and need to dial back the intensity. Cognitive flexibility training involves practicing different ways of thinking about the same situation. Most people get stuck in rigid thinking patterns that limit their ability to adapt when circumstances change. Cognitive flexibility training teaches you to generate multiple interpretations of events and choose the most empowering perspective. One effective exercise is perspective shifting, where you take any challenging situation and practice viewing it from at least 3 different angles. How would an optimist see this? How would a pragmatist see this? And how would someone who loves challenges see this? The goal isn't to force positive thinking, but to expand your mental repertoire, so you have more options for how to interpret and respond to difficulties. The most advanced practitioners develop what's called mental cross-training, where they deliberately engage in activities outside their comfort zones to build general mental resilience. An analytical person might take improvisational acting classes to build comfort with uncertainty. A highly organized person might practice managing deliberately chaotic situations. A conflict-averse person might join debate clubs to build comfort with disagreement. Recovery protocols are just as important as training protocols. Your nervous system needs time to integrate new patterns and restore its capacity between training sessions. This might involve specific relaxation techniques, quality sleep, physical exercise, or activities that naturally restore your mental energy. The training schedule should follow the same principles as physical fitness. Consistency is more important than intensity. Progressive overload prevents plateaus, and variety prevents boredom while building well-rounded capacity. Most people benefit from daily attention training, 3 to 4 weekly emotional regulation sessions, 2 to 3 weekly stress tolerance sessions, and 1 weekly cognitive flexibility challenge. Advanced practitioners also use environmental design to create automatic training opportunities. They might deliberately choose the longer checkout line to practice patience, take cold showers to build discomfort tolerance, or schedule challenging conversations to practice emotional regulation under real conditions. The goal isn't to make your life more difficult, but to systematically build psychological capacity so that when real challenges arise, you have the mental strength to handle them effectively. Every day you skip mental training is a day your mental muscles atrophy, just like skipping physical workouts. But every day you follow your training protocol is a day you become more resilient, confident, and unbreakable. Chapter 7. Mental Rehearsal and Visualization. Programming your mind for automatic success. Most people vastly underestimate the power of mental rehearsal because they think visualization is just daydreaming or wishful thinking. But neuroscience has proven that your brain can't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you mentally rehearse successful performance, you're literally programming neural pathways that will activate automatically when you face similar situations in real life. Elite athletes have understood this for decades. Olympic performers spend hours each day visualizing perfect execution of their skills, not because they're being lazy, but because mental practice is often more effective than physical practice for building consistent performance under pressure. The same principles that allow a gymnast to visualize a perfect routine can allow you to visualize calm, effective responses to any challenging situation. The key to effective mental rehearsal is understanding the difference between outcome visualization and process visualization. Most people visualize outcomes, imagining themselves receiving awards, getting promotions, or achieving goals. While this can be motivating, it doesn't actually build the neural pathways needed to perform well under pressure. Process visualization, on the other hand, involves mentally rehearsing the specific thoughts, feelings, and actions that lead to successful outcomes. Instead of visualizing yourself giving a confident presentation, you would visualize the process. Feeling nervous before you start. Taking 3 deep breaths to center yourself. Making eye contact with friendly faces in the audience. Speaking slowly and clearly. Handling questions with curiosity instead of defensiveness. And maintaining confident posture throughout. This type of detailed process rehearsal creates neural templates that your brain can follow automatically during actual performance. The neuroscience behind this is extraordinary. When you visualize performing an action, your motor cortex fires in almost exactly the same pattern as when you actually perform that action. Your brain literally practices the skill without your body moving. Research shows that people who combine physical practice with mental rehearsal improve faster than those who only practice physically. But mental rehearsal goes far beyond just visualizing success. The most powerful applications involve rehearsing effective responses to difficult situations before they occur. This is called stress inoculation through visualization, and it's one of the most effective ways to build automatic resilience. Start by identifying specific, challenging situations you're likely to face. This might include difficult conversations with your boss, social situations that make you anxious, or high-pressure deadlines. For each situation, create a detailed mental movie of yourself, handling it with complete calm and effectiveness. The visualization needs to be multi-sensory and emotionally realistic. Don't just see yourself succeeding. Feel the physical sensations in your body, hear the sounds around you, and include the emotional challenges you would actually face. If you're visualizing a difficult conversation, include feeling nervous at the beginning, then accessing your inner calm, speaking clearly and confidently, and maintaining emotional regulation even if the other person becomes defensive. Advanced practitioners use what's called stress inoculation visualization, where they mentally rehearse increasingly challenging scenarios while maintaining perfect emotional and mental control. A public speaker might visualize handling technical difficulties, hostile audience members, or forgetting their speech, always ending the visualization with calm, resourceful responses that turn problems into opportunities to demonstrate competence. One of the most powerful techniques is future self-visualization, where you imagine yourself 1, 5, or 10 years in the future, having developed the mental strength you're working toward. You visualize this future self handling challenges that would overwhelm your current self. Then you imagine downloading that future self's wisdom, confidence, and capabilities into your present self. The timing and frequency of mental rehearsal is crucial. The most effective approach is to practice visualization during calm, relaxed states when your subconscious mind is most receptive to new programming. Many people find that the time just before falling asleep or just after waking up is ideal for mental rehearsal because your brainwaves are in the alpha state that facilitates learning and memory consolidation. Repetition is also critical. Just like learning a physical skill, mental skills require consistent practice to become automatic. Most effective practitioners do short, 5 to 10-minute visualization sessions daily, rather than long, infrequent sessions. This consistent repetition builds neural pathways that become stronger and more automatic over time. Another advanced technique is called mental contrast visualization, where you alternate between visualizing your current challenges and visualizing your ideal future responses. This creates what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific if-then plans that your brain can execute automatically. If I start feeling overwhelmed during the presentation, then I will take a deep breath and focus on helping my audience rather than on my anxiety. The most sophisticated mental rehearsal involves what's called systems thinking visualization, where you don't just rehearse individual responses but rehearse entire systems of thinking and being. You might visualize yourself approaching an entire day with unshakable confidence, handling every interaction from a place of inner strength, and maintaining emotional equilibrium, regardless of external circumstances. Some practitioners also use anchoring techniques, where they associate specific physical gestures, words, or mental images with their visualized states of mental strength. During visualization, they might clench their fist while feeling confident, creating a physical anchor they can use to trigger that same state during real situations. The goal of mental rehearsal isn't to eliminate all nervousness or difficulty from your life, but to program automatic responses that allow you to remain effective even when facing challenges. When you've mentally rehearsed calm confidence hundreds of times, accessing that state becomes as automatic as walking or breathing. Chapter 8. Building Unshakable Confidence. The internal foundation of mental strength. Most people confuse confidence with arrogance, cockiness, or positive thinking, which is why they struggle to build real confidence that lasts. True confidence isn't about feeling good about yourself all the time or believing you can do anything. Real confidence is the deep, unshakable knowing that you can handle whatever life throws at you, not because you'll never fail or struggle, but because you've proven to yourself that you can navigate challenges and come out stronger. The foundation of unshakable confidence is what psychologists call self-efficacy. Your belief in your ability to influence events that affect your life. This isn't about believing you can control everything that happens to you, but about knowing you can control your response to everything that happens to you. This distinction is crucial because it means your confidence doesn't depend on external circumstances being perfect. Most people try to build confidence by avoiding failure or seeking external validation, which creates brittle confidence that crumbles under pressure. Real confidence comes from systematically proving to yourself that you can handle failure, rejection, uncertainty, and setbacks while continuing to move toward your goals. Every time you handle a difficult situation effectively, you make a deposit in your confidence bank account. The first step in building unshakable confidence is conducting what's called a competence inventory. Most people focus on their weaknesses and failures while taking their strengths and successes for granted. This creates a distorted self-image that undermines confidence. A competence inventory involves systematically documenting all the challenges you've already overcome, skills you've developed, and difficulties you've navigated successfully. Write down every significant challenge you've faced in your life and how you handled it. Include childhood difficulties, academic challenges, social situations, work problems, relationship issues, health scares, and financial pressures. For each situation, identify the specific skills, qualities, and strategies you used to get through it. Most people are shocked to discover how much evidence they already have of their own resilience and capability. Next, develop what's called an anti-fragile identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who tries to avoid problems, start seeing yourself as someone who gets stronger through problems. This isn't positive thinking. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to challenges. When difficulties arise, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "How is this making me stronger?" The most powerful confidence-building practice is called voluntary discomfort. Deliberately putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to prove you can handle them. This might involve taking cold showers, fasting, exercising when you don't feel like it, having difficult conversations, or tackling projects that stretch your abilities. Each time you voluntarily choose discomfort and navigate it successfully, you build evidence that you can handle whatever life throws at you involuntarily. Start small with voluntary discomfort, challenges that are uncomfortable but manageable. Take the stairs instead of the elevator when you're tired. Wake up 15 minutes earlier than necessary, or strike up conversations with strangers. As you build evidence of your ability to handle minor discomforts, gradually increase the challenges. The goal isn't to make your life miserable, but to systematically expand your comfort zone. Another critical component is developing what's called outcome independence. Most people's confidence depends on specific outcomes going their way. They feel confident when they get the promotion, win the competition, or receive approval from others. This creates unstable confidence that disappears whenever outcomes don't match expectations. Outcome independence means deriving your confidence from your effort, growth, and character, rather than from specific results. This involves shifting from external metrics of success to internal metrics. Instead of measuring yourself by whether you get the job, measure yourself by whether you prepared thoroughly and performed authentically. Instead of measuring yourself by whether people like you, measure yourself by whether you showed up as your genuine self. This shift makes your confidence unshakable because it doesn't depend on factors outside your control. Advanced confidence building involves what's called competence stacking, systematically developing skills that build on each other to create exponential confidence growth. Instead of trying to build confidence in every area simultaneously, you focus on developing deep competence in one area. Then transfer that confidence to related areas. For example, you might start by building physical fitness, which develops discipline, persistence, and proof that you can change your body through consistent effort. This physical confidence then transfers to building mental discipline through meditation or learning new skills. That mental discipline confidence then transfers to professional challenges, relationship building, or creative pursuits. The neuroscience shows that confidence literally rewires your brain. When you repeatedly prove to yourself that you can handle challenges, you strengthen neural pathways associated with self-efficacy and weaken pathways associated with self-doubt. This creates an upward spiral where confidence leads to better performance, which creates more evidence of competence, which builds more confidence. One of the most effective techniques is called confidence anchoring, where you associate specific physical postures, breathing patterns, or mental phrases with your most confident states. During times when you feel strong and capable, you practice specific anchors like standing tall, breathing deeply, or repeating empowering phrases. Then you can use these anchors to access confident states even when facing new challenges. The most advanced practitioners develop what's called universal confidence, confidence that transcends specific domains or situations. This comes from understanding that all challenges are fundamentally similar. They all require the same core qualities: clear thinking, emotional regulation, persistent effort, and the willingness to learn from setbacks. When you realize you already possess these qualities and have used them successfully in various contexts, you develop confidence that you can apply them to any new situation. Chapter 9. Crisis Management. Maintaining strength when everything falls apart. The true test of mental strength isn't how you perform when everything is going well, but how you function when your world is falling apart. Crisis situations strip away all the normal supports and structures that usually help you maintain psychological equilibrium. Your job security disappears, your relationship ends, your health fails, or multiple problems hit simultaneously. This is when mental strength training either pays off or you realize how unprepared you really are. Most people respond to crisis with one of three patterns: panic, denial, or shutdown. Panic involves frantic, unfocused activity that wastes energy without solving problems. Denial involves pretending the crisis isn't happening or isn't as serious as it actually is. Shutdown involves becoming paralyzed and unable to take any meaningful action. All three responses make crises worse and extend suffering unnecessarily. Elite mental performers respond to crisis differently. They've trained themselves to enter what's called crisis mode, a state of heightened focus and simplified priorities that allows them to function effectively even when everything is chaotic. Crisis mode isn't about staying calm, it's about staying functional. You might feel scared, angry, or overwhelmed, but you maintain your ability to think clearly, make decisions, and take effective action. The foundation of effective crisis management is what's called psychological triage, the ability to quickly assess a crisis situation and prioritize your responses based on what's most critical. Just like medical triage focuses on treating the most life-threatening injuries first, psychological triage focuses on addressing the most important aspects of a crisis before dealing with secondary concerns. When crisis hits, your brain automatically shifts into survival mode, which can actually impair your judgment by making everything seem equally urgent and important. Psychological triage involves consciously stepping back from the emotional intensity to ask, what absolutely must be handled immediately? What can wait 24 hours? What can wait a week? This prevents you from wasting precious mental energy on non-critical issues during the most acute phase of the crisis. Advanced crisis management involves developing what's called crisis protocols, predetermined response plans for different types of emergencies. Just like fire departments have predetermined response protocols that allow them to function effectively under extreme stress, you can develop personal protocols that automatically activate when specific types of crises occur. A financial crisis protocol might include: immediately assess available resources, cut all non-essential expenses, contact creditors to negotiate payment plans, activate your professional network to explore income opportunities, and maintain daily routines to preserve psychological stability. Having these protocols predetermined means you don't waste mental energy figuring out what to do while you're in the midst of emotional chaos. One of the most important crisis management skills is what's called emotional compartmentalization, the ability to acknowledge and feel your emotions about the crisis without letting those emotions impair your decision-making ability. This isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about creating internal structure that allows you to experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them. The technique involves setting aside specific times for emotional processing while maintaining emotional discipline during action phases. You might allow yourself 15 minutes each morning to feel scared, angry, or sad about your situation. Then shift into problem-solving mode for the rest of the day. This prevents emotions from interfering with effective action, while ensuring you don't suppress feelings in ways that create additional psychological problems. Another critical skill is maintaining what's called resource conservation during crisis. Crises drain your mental, emotional, and physical energy much faster than normal situations. If you try to maintain your normal standards and commitments during a crisis, you'll quickly become exhausted and make the situation worse. Effective crisis management involves deliberately lowering your standards in non-essential areas to preserve energy for dealing with critical issues. This might mean eating simple foods instead of cooking elaborate meals, letting housework slide to focus on job searching, or temporarily reducing social commitments to preserve mental energy for handling the main crisis. The goal isn't to let everything fall apart, but to consciously choose which standards to temporarily relax so you can maintain high standards in the areas that matter most. Advanced practitioners also develop what's called anti-fragile crisis thinking, the ability to identify potential benefits or growth opportunities even in the midst of serious difficulties. This isn't about pretending that bad things are good, but about recognizing that many crises force positive changes that wouldn't have happened otherwise. A job loss might force you to discover career paths you wouldn't have otherwise considered. A relationship ending might free you to develop aspects of yourself that were suppressed in the relationship. A health scare might motivate lifestyle changes that dramatically improve your long-term well-being. Looking for these potential benefits doesn't minimize the real pain of crisis, but it helps you maintain hope and motivation during dark periods. One of the most powerful crisis management techniques is what's called worst-case scenario planning. When you're in crisis, your imagination often runs wild with catastrophic possibilities, which creates additional anxiety on top of the real problems you're already facing. Worst-case scenario planning involves systematically thinking through the actual worst-case outcomes and developing realistic plans for handling them. This process usually reveals that even genuine worst-case scenarios are more manageable than your anxiety makes them seem. You might lose your house but realize you have friends who would let you stay with them temporarily. You might have to declare bankruptcy but discover that people rebuild their finances successfully all the time. Planning for worst-case scenarios paradoxically reduces anxiety because it shows you that even the worst outcomes are survivable. The most advanced aspect of crisis management is developing what's called post-traumatic growth, the ability to emerge from crisis stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Research shows that many people who effectively navigate major crises report that they're ultimately grateful for the experience because of how much it forced them to grow. This growth isn't automatic. It requires conscious effort to extract lessons, develop new capacities, and integrate the experience in ways that build future resilience. But when done effectively, crisis management becomes crisis transformation, where difficulties become catalysts for reaching new levels of mental strength and life satisfaction. Chapter 10. Advanced Mental Conditioning. Techniques used by special forces and elite performers. The techniques used by Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, and other elite performers to develop extraordinary mental toughness go far beyond basic stress management or positive thinking. These advanced methods involve systematic conditioning of the nervous system to function optimally under extreme pressure, maintain clarity during chaos, and access peak performance states on command. One of the most powerful advanced techniques is what special forces call controlled breathing under stress. This isn't the basic breathing exercises most people learn, but specialized breathing protocols designed to maintain optimal brain function during high-stress situations. The technique involves specific breathing ratios that balance your autonomic nervous system even when your body is flooded with stress hormones. The tactical breathing protocol used by elite military units involves inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, exhaling for 4 counts, and holding empty for 4 counts, all while maintaining complete mental focus on the breathing pattern. But the advanced aspect isn't the breathing itself. It's practicing this technique while under increasing levels of stress, physical exertion, or cognitive demand. Advanced practitioners train this breathing pattern while doing intense physical exercise, solving complex problems, or engaging in high-pressure activities. The goal is to make optimal breathing automatic, even when every instinct tells you to breathe rapidly or hold your breath. This creates a physiological anchor that allows you to maintain peak mental function regardless of external circumstances. Another elite technique is what's called stress inoculation through micro-challenges, systematically exposing yourself to brief but intense stresses to build tolerance for longer, more complex challenges. This might involve techniques like ice baths, breath-holding exercises, or intense physical challenges that create controlled stress while you practice maintaining mental clarity. The key is that these micro-challenges are brief enough to be manageable but intense enough to trigger real stress responses. A 30-second cold shower creates genuine physiological stress, but it's short enough that you can practice optimal mental responses without becoming overwhelmed. As your tolerance builds, you gradually increase either the intensity or duration of these challenges. Elite performers also use advanced visualization techniques that go far beyond basic mental rehearsal. One method is called adversity visualization, where you mentally rehearse handling worst-case scenarios with complete calm and effectiveness. This isn't negative thinking. It's psychological preparation that makes you anti-fragile to unexpected challenges. The technique involves creating detailed mental movies of everything going wrong while you maintain perfect emotional control and strategic thinking. You visualize equipment failing, people letting you down, unexpected obstacles arising, and time running out. Always ending the visualization with calm, resourceful responses that turn problems into opportunities to demonstrate competence. Another advanced method is called performance state anchoring, where you learn to trigger peak performance states instantly through physical, mental, or environmental cues. Elite athletes often develop specific rituals, phrases, or physical movements that automatically access their optimal competitive mindset. The conditioning process involves repeatedly practicing these anchors while in genuine peak performance states, usually during training when you're already performing at high levels. Over time, the anchor becomes so strongly associated with peak performance that you can use it to access optimal states even under pressure or in new environments. Advanced mental conditioning also involves what's called cognitive load training, deliberately practicing complex mental tasks while under stress to build your ability to think clearly when overwhelmed. This might involve solving mathematical problems while exercising intensely, making strategic decisions while sleep-deprived, or maintaining detailed awareness while managing multiple competing demands. The goal isn't to make your life unnecessarily difficult, but to build mental processing capacity that far exceeds normal requirements. When you've trained yourself to think clearly while managing 10 different challenges simultaneously, handling 3 challenges feels almost easy by comparison. One of the most sophisticated techniques is called identity integration training, where you practice accessing different aspects of your personality on command, depending on what the situation requires. Elite performers often develop multiple identity modes: a focused performer, a calm leader, a creative problem solver, and a resilient warrior. The training involves consciously practicing shifting between these different modes until the transitions become automatic and instantaneous. This allows you to access the optimal mental and emotional configuration for any situation rather than being locked into a single way of being regardless of circumstances. Advanced practitioners also use what's called systems thinking under pressure, the ability to maintain awareness of multiple interconnected variables and their relationships even during high-stress situations. This involves training your mind to track cause and effect relationships, anticipate second and third-order consequences, and make decisions based on systemic understanding rather than immediate reactions. The conditioning process involves deliberately practicing complex decision-making while under various forms of stress, gradually building your ability to maintain strategic perspective, even when every instinct tells you to focus narrowly on immediate problems. Perhaps the most advanced technique is what's called transcendent motivation training, where you learn to access sources of motivation that go beyond personal comfort, success, or even survival. Elite performers often develop the ability to tap into purpose that transcends individual concerns, whether that's service to others, commitment to excellence, or contribution to something larger than themselves. This transcendent motivation becomes a source of strength that remains available even when personal motivation fails, fear becomes overwhelming, or circumstances become genuinely threatening. It's what allows elite performers to maintain effectiveness even when facing situations that would break people who only have personal motivation to rely on. Chapter 11. The Social Dimension. Building mental strength through strategic relationships. Most people think mental strength is a solo journey, something you develop in isolation through individual willpower and personal discipline. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about resilience. The truth is that the mentally strongest people in the world understand that resilience is fundamentally social. They strategically build relationships and environments that amplify their mental strength rather than drain it. Your social environment is either making you stronger or making you weaker every single day. There's no neutral ground. The people you spend time with, the conversations you engage in, and the energy you absorb from others all directly impact your mental resilience. Most people allow their social environment to happen to them randomly, surrounding themselves with whoever happens to be convenient or available. Elite performers design their social environment deliberately to support their mental development. The foundation of social mental strength is understanding the difference between energy givers and energy takers. Energy givers are people who leave you feeling more capable, motivated, and resilient after spending time with them. They challenge you to grow, support your goals, and maintain high standards for themselves and others. Energy takers are people who consistently drain your mental resources through negativity, drama, victim mentality, or demanding excessive emotional support without reciprocating. Most people tolerate energy takers in their lives because they feel guilty about setting boundaries, or because they've been conditioned to believe that being a good person means being available to everyone who needs help. But here's what elite performers understand. Allowing energy takers unlimited access to your mental resources doesn't make you compassionate. It makes you weak. You can't give what you don't have, and you can't help others develop strength if you're constantly depleting your own. Building social mental strength requires what's called strategic relationship design. This means consciously choosing to spend more time with people who elevate your thinking, challenge your assumptions, and model the kind of mental toughness you want to develop. It also means limiting exposure to people who consistently reinforce victim mentality, negative thinking patterns, or low standards for personal growth. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone who's going through difficult times or only associating with successful people. It means distinguishing between people who are facing challenges while maintaining personal responsibility and growth mindset versus people who have made victimhood and negativity core parts of their identity. The most powerful social strategy for building mental strength is what's called the mentor-peer-student model. This involves simultaneously maintaining relationships with people who are more mentally strong than you are, people who are at your current level, and people who are less developed than you are. Each type of relationship serves a different function in your development. Mentors are people whose mental toughness you admire and want to emulate. These might be formal mentors, coaches, or simply people you observe and learn from. The key is to actively study how they think, how they handle challenges, and what principles guide their decision-making. Most people are too proud or intimidated to actively seek mentorship, which keeps them stuck at their current level indefinitely. Peers are people who are working on similar challenges and have similar levels of mental development. These relationships provide accountability, shared learning, and mutual support during difficult times. The most effective peer relationships involve honest feedback, shared challenges, and mutual commitment to growth rather than just social comfort. Students are people you're helping to develop mental strength. Teaching others forces you to clarify your own thinking, reinforces your own learning, and creates accountability for maintaining high standards. When you know someone is looking up to you as an example of mental toughness, you're less likely to allow yourself to slip into weak thinking patterns. Another critical aspect of social mental strength is developing what's called emotional contagion immunity. Emotions are literally contagious through mirror neurons and unconscious mimicry. If you spend time around anxious, negative, or mentally weak people without proper protection, you'll unconsciously absorb those emotional states. Emotional contagion immunity involves learning to remain centered in your own emotional state, regardless of the emotional chaos around you. This isn't about being cold or disconnected. It's about maintaining your ability to choose your emotional responses rather than automatically mirroring whatever emotions others are projecting. The technique involves practicing emotional boundaries where you can empathize with others without absorbing their emotional states. You can understand that someone is anxious without becoming anxious yourself. You can care about someone's problems without taking on their stress. This skill is essential for anyone who wants to help others while maintaining their own mental strength. Elite performers also understand the power of what's called collective efficacy, the shared belief among a group that they can handle challenges and achieve difficult goals together. This is why special forces units, elite sports teams, and high-performing organizations spend so much time building team cohesion and shared identity. You can apply this principle by consciously building or joining groups that share your commitment to mental strength and personal excellence. This might involve joining or creating mastermind groups, training partners, accountability groups, or communities focused on high performance. When you're surrounded by people who expect excellence from themselves and each other, maintaining high standards becomes automatic rather than requiring constant willpower. One of the most advanced social strategies is what's called selective vulnerability. This involves strategically sharing your challenges, fears, and growth areas with people who can provide useful support and feedback, while maintaining appropriate boundaries with people who would use that information to undermine your confidence or create drama. Many people make the mistake of either oversharing with everyone, which can damage their reputation and drain their energy, or sharing with no one, which prevents them from accessing valuable support and perspective. Selective vulnerability means carefully choosing who gets access to your inner world based on their ability to provide constructive support. The most sophisticated practitioners develop what's called social leadership, where they actively shape the mental culture of their relationships and environments. Instead of just trying to protect themselves from negative influences, they become positive influences that elevate everyone around them. This involves modeling the kind of mental strength you want to see in others, initiating conversations that promote growth and solutions rather than complaints and problems, and creating shared experiences that build collective resilience. When you become a source of mental strength for others, you not only help them, but also reinforce your own commitment to maintaining high standards. Chapter 12. Long-term maintenance. Staying mentally strong when life gets comfortable. The greatest threat to mental strength isn't crisis, failure, or external adversity. It's success and comfort. When things are going well, when your income is stable, your relationships are smooth, and your health is good, that's when mental strength atrophies most rapidly. Most people only focus on building resilience when they're forced to by circumstances. Then they gradually lose that strength when life becomes easier. This creates a dangerous cycle where people build mental toughness during difficult periods, then lose it during comfortable periods, leaving them unprepared when the next wave of challenges arrives. Elite performers understand that mental strength requires lifelong maintenance regardless of external circumstances. They've learned to stay strong not just despite comfort, but because of it. The fundamental challenge of comfort is that it removes the natural stresses that maintain mental resilience. Just like physical muscles atrophy when they're not challenged, mental muscles weaken when life becomes too easy. Your stress tolerance decreases, your emotional regulation becomes less precise, and your confidence becomes dependent on things continuing to go well, rather than on your ability to handle things going poorly. The solution isn't to create unnecessary drama or reject success when it comes, but to develop what's called artificial challenge systems that maintain your mental conditioning even when life isn't naturally challenging you. This involves deliberately introducing controlled stressors and growth opportunities that keep your psychological systems sharp. One of the most effective maintenance strategies is what's called comfort zone expansion protocols. Instead of waiting for circumstances to push you beyond your comfort zone, you systematically identify areas where you've become too comfortable and deliberately create challenges that force continued growth. This might involve taking on professional projects that stretch your capabilities, learning skills that feel intimidating, or putting yourself in social situations that require you to grow. The key is that these challenges should feel meaningful and aligned with your values, not arbitrary or masochistic. You're not trying to make your life harder, you're trying to keep growing stronger. Advanced practitioners develop what's called lifestyle stress inoculation, where they build regular practices that maintain their stress tolerance even during peaceful periods. This might include regular cold exposure, intermittent fasting, intense physical training, or deliberate exposure to manageable social or professional pressures. The goal isn't to be constantly stressed, but to maintain your capacity to handle stress effectively. Just like vaccines expose you to small amounts of viruses to maintain immunity, lifestyle stress inoculation exposes you to small amounts of stress to maintain resilience. Another critical aspect of long-term maintenance is what's called mental strength auditing, regularly assessing your current level of resilience across different domains and identifying areas that need attention. Most people only discover weaknesses in their mental strength when they're already in crisis, and it's too late to address them effectively. A comprehensive mental strength audit evaluates your current capacity in areas like stress tolerance, emotional regulation, uncertainty tolerance, conflict resolution, decision-making under pressure, and recovery from setbacks. For each area, you honestly assess whether your skills are improving, maintaining, or declining, and you develop specific training protocols to address any weaknesses. The audit also examines your support systems, daily practices, environmental factors, and belief systems to identify potential vulnerabilities. You might discover that your mental strength depends too heavily on specific relationships, routines, or external circumstances, making you vulnerable if those factors change. One of the biggest maintenance challenges is what's called hedonic adaptation, where your baseline expectations adjust to your current circumstances, making it harder to appreciate what you have and easier to take your mental strength for granted. When you've been mentally strong for a while, it starts feeling normal rather than special, which can lead to complacency. The solution involves regularly reconnecting with your growth journey by reviewing where you started, acknowledging how far you've come, and maintaining gratitude for the mental capabilities you've developed. This isn't about becoming self-congratulatory, but about maintaining awareness of what you've built so you stay motivated to preserve and enhance it. Another powerful maintenance strategy is what's called teaching and mentoring others. When you help other people develop mental strength, you're forced to articulate your own principles, refine your understanding, and maintain high standards in your own behavior. Teaching others also reminds you of fundamental concepts that you might otherwise take for granted. The most effective approach involves finding people who are at earlier stages of their mental strength journey and providing guidance, accountability, and encouragement. This might happen through formal coaching or mentoring, or through informal relationships where you serve as an example and resource for others. Advanced maintenance also involves what's called periodic intensity cycles, where you deliberately go through periods of higher challenge and intensity, followed by periods of integration and recovery. Instead of trying to maintain constant intensity or constant ease, you create rhythms that include both challenge and rest. This might involve planning quarterly challenges where you push yourself significantly beyond your normal comfort zone, followed by periods where you integrate what you learned and allow your nervous system to recover. This prevents both the stagnation that comes from too much comfort and the burnout that comes from too much intensity. The most sophisticated maintenance approaches involve what's called adaptive goal setting, where you continuously adjust your mental strength objectives based on your changing life circumstances, values, and capacities. What challenges you at 20 might not challenge you at 40, and what seemed important in one life stage might be irrelevant in another. This requires regularly reassessing what mental strength means for your current situation and adjusting your training accordingly. You might shift from building stress tolerance to refining emotional subtlety, or from developing individual resilience to building leadership capabilities that help others develop strength. Perhaps the most critical aspect of long-term maintenance is developing what's called intrinsic motivation for mental strength. When you first start building resilience, you might be motivated by external pressures, fear of failure, or desire for achievement. But sustainable mental strength requires finding reasons to stay strong that go beyond external circumstances. This often involves connecting mental strength to your deepest values and sense of purpose. You maintain resilience not because you have to, but because being mentally strong allows you to show up as your best self for the people and causes you care about. This intrinsic motivation remains stable regardless of external success or comfort levels. Chapter 13. Mental Strength Leadership. Elevating others while becoming unbreakable yourself. The highest level of mental strength isn't just personal resilience. It's the ability to help others develop unbreakable mindsets while becoming even stronger yourself. When you can maintain your own mental toughness while simultaneously elevating the mental strength of everyone around you, you've reached a level of psychological mastery that most people never even consider possible. Mental strength leadership goes far beyond just being a good example or offering encouragement when others face challenges. It's about understanding how to create environments, conversations, and experiences that systematically build resilience in others while reinforcing your own commitment to mental excellence. This is what separates truly elite performers from those who are just personally resilient. The foundation of mental strength leadership is understanding that strength is contagious when transmitted properly. Most people try to help others by giving advice, sharing their experiences, or providing emotional support. While these can be helpful, they don't actually build mental strength in others. Real mental strength can only be developed through guided experience, where people learn to handle challenges themselves with appropriate support and feedback. The key is creating what psychologists call scaffolded challenges, situations where people face genuine difficulties that stretch their capabilities but remain within their zone of proximal development. This means the challenge is hard enough to require growth, but not so overwhelming that it creates trauma or shutdown responses. As a mental strength leader, your role is to design these experiences, provide the right amount of support, and help people extract the lessons that build their confidence and capability. This requires deep understanding of each person's current capacity, their specific growth edges, and the types of challenges that will most effectively build their particular weak areas. One of the most powerful leadership techniques is what's called progressive challenge design. Instead of waiting for life to randomly create difficult situations, you systematically expose people to increasingly challenging experiences while providing the framework and support they need to succeed. This might involve gradually increasing responsibilities, creating controlled stress situations, or facilitating difficult conversations. The progression must be carefully calibrated. If you move too slowly, people become bored and don't grow. If you move too quickly, they become overwhelmed and lose confidence. The art is finding the sweet spot where people feel stretched but capable, challenged but supported. Advanced mental strength leaders also develop what's called diagnostic thinking, the ability to quickly assess what specific aspects of mental strength someone needs to develop and design appropriate interventions. Some people need to build stress tolerance. Others need better emotional regulation. And still others need to develop clearer thinking under pressure. This requires understanding the different components of mental strength and being able to recognize which areas are strong and which areas need development in each individual. It also requires having a toolkit of different types of challenges and exercises that target specific mental muscles. One of the most sophisticated leadership approaches is what's called adaptive coaching, where you adjust your leadership style based on each person's learning style, personality, and current development level. Some people respond best to direct challenge and tough love, while others need more support and encouragement. Some learn best through experience, while others need more explanation and discussion. The most effective mental strength leaders can fluidly shift between different approaches depending on what each person needs in each moment. This requires high emotional intelligence, careful observation skills, and the ability to separate your natural teaching style from what actually works best for each individual. Mental strength leadership also involves modeling the mindset and behaviors you want to see in others. People learn more from watching how you handle challenges than from listening to what you say about handling challenges. When you consistently demonstrate calm under pressure, resilience in the face of setbacks, and commitment to growth despite difficulties, others naturally begin to adopt similar patterns. But modeling goes beyond just being a good example. Advanced leaders practice what's called intentional modeling, where you deliberately make your mental processes visible to others. You verbalize your thinking during challenging situations. Explain how you're managing your emotions during stressful moments, and share your decision-making process when facing difficult choices. This gives people insight into how mental strength actually works in practice, rather than just seeing the end results. They learn to recognize the internal processes that create external resilience, which allows them to develop those same processes in themselves. Another critical component is creating what's called psychological safety with appropriate challenge. People need to feel safe enough to take risks, make mistakes, and be vulnerable about their struggles. But they also need to be challenged enough to actually grow stronger. This balance is delicate and requires skillful leadership. Psychological safety comes from consistent support, non-judgmental feedback, and clear communication that mistakes are learning opportunities rather than failures. The challenge comes from setting high standards, providing honest feedback about areas needing improvement, and refusing to accept excuses or victim mentality. Advanced mental strength leaders also understand the power of collective efficacy, building shared beliefs within groups that they can handle challenges together. This involves creating team experiences that require collective problem-solving, mutual support, and shared responsibility for outcomes. When groups successfully navigate difficult challenges together, they develop confidence not just in their individual abilities, but in their collective capacity to handle whatever comes their way. This creates a culture of mental strength that reinforces itself and becomes more powerful than any individual's personal resilience. One of the most advanced leadership techniques is what's called transformational reframing, helping people completely change how they interpret challenges, setbacks, and difficulties. Instead of seeing problems as obstacles to overcome or endure, you help them see problems as opportunities to build strength, gather data, and accelerate growth. This isn't just positive thinking or motivation. It's a fundamental shift in how someone relates to difficulty itself. When people genuinely begin to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats, they become anti-fragile, actually getting stronger through adversity rather than just surviving it. The highest level of mental strength leadership involves what's called legacy building, developing systems and cultures that continue building mental strength in others long after you're no longer directly involved. This means creating self-reinforcing environments where strong mental habits become the norm, where people naturally challenge and support each other, and where the principles of mental strength are embedded in how things get done. This requires thinking beyond individual development to systemic change, designing processes, structures, and cultures that naturally promote mental resilience. When you can create environments that automatically build mental strength in anyone who participates in them, you've achieved true leadership mastery. Chapter 14. The Compound Effect. How mental strength accelerates every area of your life. Most people think of mental strength as just one skill among many, something that helps you handle stress and bounce back from setbacks. But this dramatically underestimates its true impact. Mental strength is a meta skill that amplifies every other capability you possess. When you develop genuine psychological resilience, it creates a compound effect that accelerates your growth and performance in every area of life. The compound effect works because mental strength affects the quality of your thinking, decision-making, and execution in every domain. When you can think clearly under pressure, regulate your emotions effectively, and maintain long-term perspective, despite short-term difficulties, you make better decisions in your career, relationships, health, finances, and personal development. In your professional life, mental strength transforms how you approach challenges, negotiations, leadership opportunities, and setbacks. Instead of being paralyzed by fear of failure or overwhelmed by complex problems, you develop the capacity to break down challenges systematically, maintain focus under pressure, and persist through difficulties that stop others. This doesn't just make you more productive, it makes you more valuable. Organizations desperately need people who can maintain effectiveness during crises, think strategically during uncertain times, and help others stay focused when everything feels chaotic. Mental strength makes you someone others can depend on when things get difficult, which accelerates your career progression far beyond what technical skills alone could achieve. The financial impact is equally significant. Mental strength affects every aspect of financial decision-making, from avoiding emotional spending during stress to maintaining long-term investment strategies despite market volatility. When you can separate emotions from financial decisions, delay gratification consistently, and maintain optimism about long-term outcomes while being realistic about short-term challenges, you make better money decisions across the board. Mental strength also increases your capacity to take calculated risks, start businesses, negotiate effectively, and persist through the inevitable setbacks that come with building wealth. Most people's financial limitations aren't due to lack of knowledge or opportunity, but due to mental barriers like fear of failure, inability to delay gratification, or tendency to make emotional decisions during stress. In relationships, mental strength transforms your ability to communicate effectively, handle conflict constructively, and maintain emotional stability during difficult periods. When you can regulate your own emotions, stay focused on solutions rather than blame, and maintain perspective during relationship stress, you create much healthier relationship dynamics. This includes romantic relationships, family relationships, friendships, and professional relationships. Mental strength allows you to set appropriate boundaries, communicate your needs clearly, handle others' emotional reactions without becoming reactive yourself, and maintain commitment to important relationships, even when they go through challenging phases. The health benefits of mental strength extend far beyond stress management. When you can maintain long-term thinking despite short-term discomfort, you make consistently better choices about nutrition, exercise, sleep, and healthcare. You can stick to health routines even when motivation is low, handle medical procedures and health scares without panic, and maintain hope and proactive behavior even when facing serious health challenges. Research shows that people with higher levels of mental resilience have better immune function, lower rates of chronic disease, faster recovery from medical procedures, and greater longevity. Mental strength literally affects your biology through its impact on stress hormones, inflammation levels, and behavioral choices that affect physical health. The learning and development advantages are particularly powerful. Mental strength dramatically accelerates your ability to acquire new skills, overcome learning plateaus, and persist through the frustration that comes with mastering difficult subjects. When you can maintain motivation despite setbacks, stay focused despite distractions, and approach challenges with curiosity rather than anxiety, you learn faster and retain more. This creates an exponential effect, where your increased learning capacity allows you to develop other capabilities more quickly, which increases your mental strength even further, which accelerates your learning even more. People with high mental resilience often appear to be naturally talented across multiple domains, but they're actually just better at the learning process itself. Mental strength also enhances creativity and innovation by reducing the fear and anxiety that normally inhibit creative risk-taking. When you're not worried about judgment, failure, or uncertainty, you're much more willing to explore unconventional solutions, experiment with new approaches, and persist through the trial and error process that leads to breakthrough innovations. The social influence benefits compound over time as well. When you consistently demonstrate mental strength, others naturally look to you for leadership during difficult periods. This creates opportunities for advancement, collaboration, and impact that wouldn't be available to someone who becomes unreliable during stress or conflict. People with strong mental resilience often find themselves in positions of informal leadership even when they don't seek those roles, simply because others feel more confident and secure around people who remain stable during uncertainty. This social influence creates additional opportunities for career advancement, relationship building, and personal impact. Perhaps most importantly, mental strength increases your capacity to pursue meaningful goals despite obstacles and setbacks. Most people abandon their most important aspirations, not because the goals are impossible, but because they can't handle the emotional difficulty of persistent effort in the face of uncertainty and temporary failures. When you develop genuine mental toughness, you can pursue goals that require years of consistent effort, handle the emotional ups and downs of long-term projects, and maintain motivation even when progress feels slow or non-existent. This allows you to achieve things that require sustained effort over time, which tend to be the most meaningful and rewarding accomplishments. The compound effect accelerates over time because each area of improvement supports the others. Better physical health increases your mental resilience, which improves your relationships, which reduces stress, which improves your decision-making, which leads to better career and financial outcomes, which increases your options and reduces anxiety, which further improves your mental strength. This creates an upward spiral where mental strength leads to better outcomes, which provide more resources and opportunities, which make it easier to maintain mental strength, which leads to even better outcomes. The people who seem to have everything going their way are often those who developed strong mental resilience early and have been benefiting from this compound effect for years. The key insight is that mental strength isn't just about handling adversity. It's about optimizing every aspect of your life through better thinking, decision-making, and execution. When you truly understand this compound effect, investing time and energy in building mental resilience becomes obviously worthwhile, regardless of your current challenges or goals. Chapter 15. Your Unbreakable Future. Integrating everything and maintaining lifelong strength. You now possess something that most people will never develop: a complete understanding of how to build genuine, unshakable mental strength. Not the shallow, positive thinking that crumbles under pressure. Not the motivational hype that fades when times get tough. But real psychological resilience that allows you to thrive regardless of what life throws at you. But knowledge without implementation is worthless. The difference between people who transform their lives and those who just consume information is the willingness to actually apply what they've learned. Everything you've discovered means nothing if it remains theoretical. Your mental strength is only as real as the daily practices you're willing to commit to and the challenges you're willing to face. The journey ahead requires understanding that building unbreakable mental strength is not a destination you reach, but a way of being you develop and maintain throughout your entire life. There is no point where you can declare yourself finished and stop growing. The strongest people in the world understand that strength requires constant cultivation, constant challenge, and constant refinement. Your first step is conducting an honest assessment of where you currently stand. Most people overestimate their mental strength because they've never truly tested it under pressure. They confuse feeling confident during easy times with actually being resilient during difficult times. Real mental strength assessment requires examining how you perform during stress, setbacks, uncertainty, and sustained pressure. Look at your recent responses to challenging situations. Did you maintain clear thinking under pressure, or did you become reactive and emotional? Did you persist through difficulties while maintaining effectiveness, or did you give up or burn out? Did you recover quickly from setbacks, or did they derail you for extended periods? This honest assessment shows you exactly where you need to focus your development efforts. The integration process requires developing what's called a personal mental strength protocol, a systematic approach to building and maintaining resilience that fits your specific life circumstances, personality, and goals. This isn't a one-size-fits-all program, but a customized system that addresses your unique strengths and weaknesses. Your protocol should include daily practices for attention training, emotional regulation, and stress inoculation. It should include weekly challenges that push you beyond your comfort zone in controlled ways. It should include monthly assessments of your progress and adjustments to your training based on what you're learning about yourself. And it should include quarterly intensive periods where you deliberately test your mental strength under more demanding conditions. The daily practices don't need to be time-consuming, but they need to be consistent. 5 to 10 minutes of focused attention training, a few minutes of emotional regulation practice, and one small voluntary discomfort challenge can build significant mental strength over time. The key is making these practices non-negotiable parts of your routine, like brushing your teeth or eating meals. The weekly challenges should systematically address areas where you feel less confident. If uncertainty makes you anxious, design challenges that involve making decisions with incomplete information. If conflict makes you uncomfortable, Practice having difficult conversations or expressing disagreement respectfully. If time pressure stresses you out, create artificial deadlines that push you to perform under time constraints. One of the most critical aspects of long-term success is building what's called anti-fragile systems rather than just personal resilience. This means creating environments, relationships, and routines that not only support your mental strength, but actually make you stronger when they're disrupted. Anti-fragile systems include diverse income sources that make you more secure when one source disappears. Multiple meaningful relationships that strengthen your social support when individual relationships change. Various sources of identity and self-worth that remain stable when any single source is threatened, and flexible routines that maintain your mental training even when your schedule is disrupted. Your mental strength development should also include teaching and mentoring others. This serves multiple purposes. It reinforces your own understanding of mental strength principles. It creates accountability for maintaining high standards in your own behavior. It builds your leadership skills and social influence. And it contributes to something larger than your personal development. The teaching doesn't need to be formal. You can model mental strength in your daily interactions, share insights with friends and family members who are interested, offer support to people facing challenges, and create informal accountability relationships with people who share your commitment to personal growth. Advanced practitioners also develop what's called legacy thinking, where they consider how their mental strength will impact not just their own lives, but the lives of people around them and future generations. When you develop genuine resilience, you model what's possible for your children, colleagues, and community. You become proof that people can be strong, capable, and thriving regardless of circumstances. This legacy perspective provides motivation that goes beyond personal benefits. Even when you don't feel like maintaining your mental training, you can draw on your commitment to being an example of what humans are capable of. This transcendent motivation becomes especially important during periods when personal motivation feels low. Perhaps most importantly, you must understand that the path ahead will include setbacks, plateaus, and periods where you question whether this work is worth the effort. Mental strength development is not linear. You'll have periods of rapid growth, followed by periods where progress feels invisible. You'll have times when you feel incredibly resilient, followed by times when you feel more fragile than ever. These fluctuations are normal and actually necessary for long-term development. The plateaus force you to deepen your practice rather than just expanding it. The setbacks teach you that your strength is more resilient than your confidence. The doubts help you distinguish between genuine wisdom and mere bravado. The people who develop truly unbreakable mental strength are those who persist through these natural cycles without interpreting temporary difficulties as evidence that they're failing or that the process isn't working. They understand that building psychological resilience is like building physical fitness. It requires consistent effort over extended periods, and the benefits compound gradually rather than appearing immediately. Your unbreakable future depends on your willingness to commit to this process for the long term. Not because it's easy or always enjoyable, but because it's the path to becoming the kind of person who can handle whatever life brings while helping others do the same. You have everything you need to begin this transformation today. The only question remaining is whether you'll choose to use it. The choice is yours. You can return to your previous patterns and continue living at the mercy of your circumstances and emotions. Or you can begin building the unshakable mental strength that will transform not just how you handle challenges, but how you experience life itself. The techniques are proven, the path is clear, and your capacity for growth is unlimited. Now it's time to prove to yourself what you're truly capable of.